Now we've got like big bookings coming on next, so I can see everyone's hustling to sit down. We've got two amazing world-famous names. So first of all, we've got Bryan Lourd, who the RTS has been trying to book for decades, but magically, somehow, we've done it. He is the chairman of CAA. He's been the boss there since 1995, which is like pretty incredible to stay in power anywhere that long, certainly here in our government. But even more spectacular in Hollywood, he's got a Hollywood royalty roster of clients. He's just sold the company, or part of the company, to Artemis last week for a mere $7 billion overall valuation. He's unusual because he also, as a senior executive, has gone out and done things like joined the strike on the picket lines. So he is proper Hollywood royalty, and he's coming here with both Hollywood and proper British royalty, Emma Thompson, who's about to come out in a minute, who's spectacular and we all love. She, maybe you don't know, but really only really got her break because she was on Channel 4 in her one-woman written and performed show in 1986 called Emma Thompson Up for Grabs, title that's probably best put in the archives. She probably owes it all to us. That was well before Howard's End. We've kept them backstage where we've put them in an airless room with no windows. They've been eating bananas in sort of British style. So please, with no further ado, now that we're reset, welcome to the stage Bryan Lourd and Emma Thompson.
You know, I tried to call that Channel 4 special Sexually Transmitted, which I thought was a very good title, but I wasn't allowed. Anyway, I'm not bitter about it, obviously, all this time later. So, hello, I'm Emma, Bryan.
Hello.
We are mates. So this is not a rehearsed thing, this is a conversation. So we haven't got any prompts. Which may mean that we'll dry up in places, but that's fine. And we're here partly because we're very good friends, but also because we are very passionate about television for kind of different reasons and the same reasons. So we thought maybe the best way to start was by expressing that. Why am I passionate about television? And because I suppose it created me in a way, it trained me. I went and did television on comedy from a very, very early age. I learnt so much from early comedy producers in LWT, in Granada Television, all these wonderful old television companies that made all sorts of interesting stuff back then. And then I was trained by doing long-form television, 7-hour, 6-hour series. And because I hadn't gone to drama school, I just got to be in front of a camera for months on end. And I learned how to act in front of a camera. And I watched television, it brought me up, you know. I was brought up on stuff like The Jewel in the Crown and I, Claudius, you know, Derek doing a fantastic lisp. And it really was such an important part of my life. And that has changed a lot, and we will talk about that. But I loved it, and I still love it. And I think that there's all sorts of discussions to be had about how it can be made as passionate and lovable as it always was. Well, what about you, Don?
Well, I should start by saying I sucked Emma Thompson into this. So you should know that when I was asked to come, which I was really honored to come, I was super nervous about it, and so they said, well, maybe you can bring someone with you. And I thought, like, I know, the most brilliant woman I know who lives in England is a dame and a mate, a friend, and has more experience than most people I know on all sides of the equation. So thank you for coming, and thank you for having us. I'm American, as you all know, and I was really excited to be here for a couple of reasons. One, I think we're living in a time that is so challenging for so many people. And when I think about where I grew up, which was a small town in Louisiana, my exposure to the outside world was a two-channel system. There were literally 2 channels in New Iberia, and a lot of it was local programming. And every once in a while, there was the odd, sitcom or television show from that period, which was the late 60s, early 70s. But the role of television has only become more important as we've all grown and gotten older. And just to hit it head on, I don't think there's too much to watch. I think that is a great sign that we are in a dynamic now where if you've got an idea and you're an individual that has the ability to express that idea, that you've got the opportunity for it to be seen. And how amazing is that? Definitely there are problems with it. There's a misalignment, and it's something I think we wanted to talk about because we feel like we're partners in our lives, in our professional lives, personal lives in a different way. No disrespect to both our husbands, but that there is a need for alignment and partnership with a creative life and a business life, and that's what we've strive to do at our company, to build that kind of dynamic. And I'm really fortunate enough to have that with you, Emma.
Yes, it's funny, isn't it, that we're, I think, slightly brainwashed, perhaps, as creative people. There's always been this kind of rather rude atmosphere around the word executives, and I think that's a very important thing. I mean, I think the relationship between the executive branch, as it were, of television and the creative branch of television just has to be closer. It has to be much, much more knitted in. When I hear people talk about content, it makes me feel like the stuffing inside a sofa or a cushion, just a kind of some stuff. It's just stuff, content. Content, what do you mean, content? It's just rude, actually. What I want to hear is, it's just a rude word for creative people. I know there are students in the audience. You don't want to hear your stuff, your stories described as content, or your acting or your producing described as content. That's just like kind of coffee grounds in the sink or something. It's just, I think, a very misleading word, and I think it's one of the things that maybe the language around the way in which we speak to one another, the way in which the executives speak to creatives, the way in which we have to understand one another and combine better. I mean, I've been about to work with Ash, and Ash is an executive person in an executive role, but we sit down, so rude, but we sit down together and have proper conversation, look at each other, really understand each other, and out of that conversation comes the creative, executive, productive conversation, out of which comes the story. Those are the conversations that everyone needs to be having, instead of having some group of people going, we need this content, and then those people over there who will do the writing, and we don't need to have to do with them. Does that make any sense, Bri?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and we have both been fortunate enough to live through decades now of the different...
About 80 between us.
About 80 between
years.
us of the different approaches to what gets made and how it gets seen, where it comes from, who it comes from. And the thing that I think is dangerous about the time that we're living in is that all the talk of data and algorithms and this analysis of formulas of what people want to see or don't want to see, all due respect to the previous speakers, I think is not true. I think that the individual idea and that thing that grows and that tribe you assemble around it is what makes for a hit. I think it's what drives our businesses, and I think when we forget that, which sometimes the business people, and a lot of business people have infiltrated our worlds now, confuse you, and the noise goes off in your head that you're supposed to second guess people and you're supposed to plot to get to something in the end that is familiar or that is like something that's been seen before. And as we all know, oftentimes it's the executive that has a gut, that has the confidence to pick and to bring themselves to it in a really brilliant way, that is the sort of capital and the confidence that the artist needs in order to get to the thing that resonates, that reflects our time, and that resonates, not just locally, but globally when it happens.
Yeah, to that point, I was mentoring a young woman through BAFTA, actually. She told me a really interesting story that you might find pertinent. She'd been in a television series that was very successful, and she was regarded as very successful in it. So she was asked to go to meetings with executive people who ran various production companies, and she went. And I said, well, what were those meetings like? And they said, well, what do you want to do? And suddenly, you know, her brain exploded, because you don't really know what you want to do until it suddenly comes along. And she felt lost, actually, which was why she wanted to talk to me. And what struck me was what they were doing was they were sort of monetizing her. They knew that she was successful in a television series, and that anything that she wanted to do, they would get behind, because that would be successful. And it was the wrong way round. The conversation was not helpful to her. It didn't help her develop her story or anything that she wanted. I said, what is it you want to say at the moment? You know, what story is it that you want to tell? And she wanted to go back to stand-up. She wanted to go back to comedy. And I said, well, then that's what you must do. Because what we're talking about, to a certain degree, and we get so lost, particularly when we're talking about big subjects like Too Much to Watch, is authenticity. What's authentic? Because what is authentic, whether you like it or not, is going to be meaningful to somebody. That's how you find your audience. You find your audience by being completely authentic, not by saying, oh, well, it's got to be like this, and it's got to be a palimpsest of that, and it's got to remind us of this, and then give us that. Because these formulas don't work, and if they do work, they feel formulaic, and then you sit there and you watch something, and you wonder why at the end of it you feel a bit ill. And I think that's something else that we don't talk about as creators in television and in film. How does it make us feel inside ourselves after we've seen something?
Yeah, and I think one of the positive things about this new, relatively new global distribution system that exists as a result of streaming and the businesses that are being built is that we're getting stories from all over the world in this unbelievable way. And COVID and the pandemic, as awful as it was on millions of levels, forced us into our homes and allowed us to be reminded that we can actually read subtitles, and that they don't actually destroy work. They make it possible to understand stories from everywhere. And so that authenticity, I think that is allowed, if you program that way, is so beneficial to the world at large in so many different ways. And they're not all going to be the biggest hit, but it's the add up and the cumulative effect that either a studio or a streaming service or a network allows, that is like a great newspaper that you sit down and you read, and at the end of your hour and a half, 2 hours, however much coffee you need to drink or however slow you read, you feel like you've been through the world that day and what's really going on. You get a hit that gives you the ability to inform your own humanity and your own decisions, both creatively and from a business standpoint. So I think it's not too much at all. I think it's exciting. There are strikes, as we know, going on right now, and they've been going on for quite some time, as everyone knows, and the terrible effects it's had on individuals, not just the members of the guilds, but the communities at large around them, are profound. It's an understatement. What I believe is that they're born from a misalignment of artists and what they do and the businesses that benefit from what they do. And I think that it's not my negotiation, so I'm not really, qualified to say where things are or aren't. But what I do know, as an observer for quite a long time, is that there is an urgency on all our part to take these relationships and these partnerships much more seriously in a way that has never been true before. And if we don't do that, there's going to be a knock-on effect that will shift what gets seen, how people get compensated, what kind of lives people can depend on in the creative, world that they can build or not build. And it's really, once this is over, and it will be over, there's a healing and a commitment to partnership that has to occur, or else we'll destroy what is an amazing, industry and opportunity, not just for us, but for the next generations. So I don't know if that satisfies the programmers in terms of what I'm saying about the strikes or not, but I'm confident that we're closer to the end than the beginning, and I know that there is now an urgency around these conversations, and there wasn't, and that's a failure in leadership.
I suppose, yeah.
Conversation stopper.
Well, yeah.
I'm very good at stopping conversations, as you know.
No, but I mean, it is so painful because, even Nancy Pelosi was talking about this strike because it affects so many different groups of people. We're thinking it's actors and writers, but everyone is affected. I've been writing to friends who are crew people, who are costume people, who are makeup people, who aren't working, and so it's a very, very, very hard time. People are suffering so much, and there's actually, it's sort of hidden as well, because there's something about the words, an actor's strike, that doesn't sound the same to people as the doctors are on strike or the miners are on strike. It's got a different feel to it, because we don't work all the time, and I suppose that's the point, is we're self-employed. Yeah. And I suppose that is also essential with regard to this, what we're talking about here, the relationship between creatives, people who write and act and write music and create story, don't live or work in organizations like the executives do. We have a different form of life. We live more job to job. We're self-employed, and that's got to be talked about, and the Rubik's Cube of it has to be better. Yeah.
And I think that there's a responsibility on all sides of the equation to understand the other person's challenge. So for artists to understand what suits and executives actually are up against,
for sure,
is really important. And great artists, really, the ones I've been fortunate enough to work with, really do have a part of their brain to say, so explain exactly what we're up against and what they need or don't need, and then you can factor that into your approach. And for executives, man, when you actually bother to understand how difficult it is to create from nothing, and then to pull an army of people together in order to get something done, you get better results, and I think your audience and your customer gets a much better experience as a result of that extra effort. So not to reprimand anyone, but we slipped in the last 10 years into an executive mentality that was all about business and about mergers and acquisitions and data and analytics, and the people that make the mistake to over-index on that lose the great opportunity they have in being in this industry and these jobs, is to foster ideas.
Yeah, and I've worked with fantastic executives who have been really creative. Yeah. So it's dumb of us, actually, not to consider the possibility that executives can be creative and that creatives can also have executive ability. Yeah. There's absolutely no question about that. I've spoken to a lot of actors recently, actually, trying to get a film together, and then and they end up just producing it. Yeah. And so all of that's rather good. I think that's a very good outcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the moment, I think what I'm thinking about as a creative person, as a writer anyway, is how responsible I feel about what I'm going to do, what I'm going to put out into the world. Now, this is different to you young ones, because you should be just like flinging it all out there. Right, left and centre, just write everything you've ever, or produce everything and just see, you know, experiment. If you're allowed to experiment, that's essential. I mean,
Yeah.
I had that opportunity because I was supported by executives who were men.
But I
who
think
were
it's
brilliant,
one
you
of the
know.
things that, you know, we didn't plan this, as you can tell, so forgive us. But one of the things that I think is fascinating about your journey from where you started and the many, many different things you did and all the hats you've worn is one of the most exciting careers that have existed in a long time, because you started on a much different road and then ended up writing in, you know, the dramatic form, even though what you'd started off as a stand-up and in comedy, found yourself in a musical that you'd never done before and learned to tap in order to get through
Not
it.
very well.
And good enough, and got through a long, long run that then led to the television work that you did and the film work, and you've gone back and forth. And now when I think about the new generation and what happens to them, nowadays people tend to hit so early on TikTok or YouTube, and we all take them down some road and expect them to be a certain thing. And if there aren't good executives, or if there isn't a good infrastructure around them, we're all going to miss out on what turns into this very versatile, you know, artist that has so many different things that are different colors. I don't know what you think about that.
No, I think that's really one of the things that worries me for younger people is, yes, there's the whole social media thing, which of course I'm completely ignorant about, because I do not watch it, use it, don't exist on social media, and if I do, it's not me. Just want you all to know.
That's the next panel.
I haven't got, was it a blue tick or something, was it? Ash is always getting at me and saying I'm very ignorant, and it's true, I am, happily. It would literally make me so ill to be on social media. It would make me very, very ill. I'd get really competitive, and, you know, I'd be just like, I've got to get to, you know, whatever the number is. I don't know what the important number is. What is it, Ash? 1 million people or something? 1 million, there you go. And I wouldn't rest until I'd be dead. Because it would make, and any of those dislikes would just send me off. I'd be in therapy for the rest of my life. So I don't do any of that. But now I've forgotten what I was talking about.
Young people starting.
Oh, yes. Is as well, if you're going to do it, and you'll have to answer this, Brian, because I don't know the answer to this, but oftentimes I think you have this, as they used to do in old Hollywood, so that there is a kind of link, the 3-picture, 4-picture, 5, 10-picture deals that used to exist, now exist in television, where if you sign up to something and you're accepted for it, you have to agree that if it's a success, you then carry on playing the same character for what can be many years.
Yeah.
And I personally I wouldn't have developed what I've developed, and that I wouldn't have the longevity that I have had. And I think that's because I don't like to have a comfort zone.
Right.
And I think I'm much more creative, and lots of people are more creative when they're not just repeating themselves. I can remember going on doing a tiny little part in Cheers. Do you remember Cheers? No, of course you don't. But it was a very, very, very long-running television series, which was wonderful.
I was a page on Cheers.
Oh, no.
So I was the person that stood in the back of the room and sat people.
Oh God, okay.
So I remember it very well.
So I did something on that when I was in my 20s, and I just remember meeting Ted Danson, one of the nicest people in the world, and one of the most unhappy, because he just couldn't, he'd been doing it for so long. And I remember looking at him and thinking, why are you so unhappy? And it was because he wanted to be able to do other things, but this had defined him for such a long time. He couldn't get out of it. And I wonder how you feel about that, given the fact that you represent young actors.
Yeah. Well, we built our company to, as you know, to have many different divisions, and the goal of the company was to be able to start there as an executive or a person out of college and training program and never have to leave, because you could work in any area you wanted to work in, from television and film, music and sports, and now finance. So that's working. For clients, I always believed, and we still believe this, that if someone has the talent or the ability to do multiple different mediums, so television, film, stage, writing, that their team encourages that and plots that. And you know how we think about your years. And there's an acting piece, and there's a big movie piece, and a small movie piece, and an original, and a rewrite, and a musical. She's working on so many different things. It's exciting. You're like the Olympian of this system. But that, I think, is what gets people to long-term careers. And the idea that you would just do one thing, unless it's the only thing you can do, seems like what a waste of talent and what a waste of life. It's interesting because this society is so committed to teaching and to learning, and you've mentored people through the years always, and it's really interesting to me as an older person now in show business, just how important that was for me, and how important it is for all of us collectively to commit to that and stay in it, both financially and with our own time. So it's great that you guys do that.
And you've got a school, your school, Roy.
We've started, yeah. There was I grew up in this small town, and 567 people graduated from my high school, and 27 went to college, and 3 people went out of state, and everyone else stayed. So most of the people that didn't go to college were the beneficiaries of trade schools, and they taught the oil industry and farming and the things that were in my part of the United States. In our business in Los Angeles, there wasn't a proper school for 9th to 12th graders to learn all the below-the-line trades. And so this group of us started this school a year and a half ago, and we partnered with the union, IATSE, which you see it is possible to partner with unions in a great way. And they committed to, as kids graduate, they'll be able to go into internships and into one of the 9 different divisions. And it's grown now to Louisiana and to New York as of 2 days ago. And it's not unlike what this group does, and it's fun. It's the most satisfying thing you could possibly do.
So we've only got 3.5 minutes, and I'm thinking again about responsibility and where we are now, because yes, we can talk till the cows come home about the theory and everything, but we have to think about where we are in the world at the moment, what we've been through in this country, what people have suffered, what they continue to suffer, what they need. And I've at the moment feel, and you may all feel differently, everyone feels differently about what's needed, but I think that what we're here for, if we're making television or film or stage or anything, is we're here to not only enlighten and illuminate and educate, but we're really here to lift people up, to that feeling of what is it I want to feel when I've finished watching something, either on television or in a movie theatre or in a theatre, is I just want to feel different. I want to feel different after I've watched something. I don't want to feel the same way. I want to feel as though I've been shifted slightly, even if it's just my mood, even if it's, or I've learnt something extraordinary. That I think is something we just have to keep on thinking about, because that takes you away from this thing of content. What is the story that you want to hear and that you want to tell that you think will make people feel different, happier, safer, stronger?
Seen. recognized, that
Seen,
you
yes.
exist
Yes.
in the
Less lonely.
fabric.
All of these are really positive things. It doesn't makes me feel like we're sort of suggesting that we're some kind of therapeutic call center now, which is not what we mean at all. It's just about what do we make this for?
Yeah, and what it makes me think about is just the power of the individual, and every single person in this room that you're even bothering to take the time to come to a conference like this means that you're somehow in the industry, or that you've somehow got a role to play in terms of what's reinforced, how change occurs, what you value, the truth you tell. And the older I get, the faster I get to common sense solutions of you recognize things and you know what is wrong and you know what's right, even if it's not exactly clear what the right step to do to identify it, and to surround yourself with people generationally that actually understand what the world is like now is the great responsibility of people that are in any position of power, and particularly men. And I don't think that it's that hard to understand anymore. It's just like, do the right thing, back the right ideas, be bold enough to be a leader and not conform to what's wrong. And I think it's an exciting time.
Yeah, and essentially, really, really talk to each other.
Yeah.
Really sit in rooms together, eye to eye. Now we can get off fucking Zoom. And talk to each other. And yes, intergenerationally, absolutely. Because everyone has so much to offer. If we keep on in our silos, then it'll be more content, you know? That's us. We've done it.